welcome to Less of Me Success Stories. We're so glad you're here this evening. As we get started and people start joining us tonight, please take a second and share us on your socials and let other people know that we're here live because we enjoy our guests and we'd love to have them come into the chat and ask questions. So please share. We really appreciate it. I'm joined tonight by my co-host, Scott, and he will be running our chat tonight.
Hey there, everybody. Good evening. Hope you're all doing well. We just want to remind you, well, first of all, we know what it's like to be hopeless and helpless. Trust us, we understand that feeling. We've been there, we've done that, and we're just here to really encourage people to take control of their lives and get past that, and just encourage people. Your story is not over. You can rewrite your story at any time. We provide a platform here where we share stories of people that have reclaimed their lives with dietary intervention, whatever it may be, specifically low carb. But that's what brings us here and the purpose of the show.
Thank you, Scott. I also want to remind everyone that neither Scott or I or our guests tonight are medical professionals, so we are not offering any medical advice. If you are trying to do any dietary interventions, please make sure you work with your medical team. That said, let's get started. I was first introduced to our guest because I was an admin on a Facebook group and I had to tell him to take a post down. That's not usually the best way to meet someone, but he was so excited to be starting his journey that he started a blog. And unfortunately, we couldn't allow the blog on the Facebook page. So I said, hey, I love what you're doing. We all want to hear your story. Why don't you go on Twitter and tell us your story there? And he did that. And he's been part of the conversation ever since. And that blog, I don't think it really went too much further than that very first year. Now we're almost at a 2-year anniversary for our guest. And he has had a lot of ups and downs along his journey. And there's been a lot of questions, a lot of trial and error. And he's here to tell us how he's doing in the almost 2-year anniversary of him and his lifestyle. So everyone, please welcome Mr. Tim Mallien.
Well, thank you, Robyn, for that kind introduction. Yeah, it was very interesting way to start a friendship by saying, hey, like your post, but you got to take it down. But that's okay. It all worked out for the good, and I'll take it. And then Scott, I don't know what to say, man. I love you, dude. I couldn't be here without you and Robyn.
I appreciate you, brother. I'm glad you followed the script and did exactly what I told you to say, even if it's a lie or not.
No cap, as the kids say.
So Tim, we want to just turn it over to you to tell us, how everything's going, how you got started into your lifestyle, and all of the things that have happened in between. So take it away.
This really kind of starts about 25 years ago when I was in high school and I was a freshman lineman. And you can look back, I haven't posted pictures from when I was a freshman because nobody wants to see their freshman year because I was that weird, awkward kid. Now I'm just that weird, awkward, almost old man. But you can see in the pictures from my football pictures that each year I gradually got a little bit bigger, and I don't mean muscular wise. Started off my freshman year wearing a size 36 pant, was probably 215 pounds. And each year it seems like I got a little bit bigger. And by the time I was a senior, I had no neck. Was sporting a pant size in the 40s. And I just kind of coasted for about 5 years until my senior year of college when I kind of got my life together. And it started out with what was called MetaFast. I don't know if you guys remember that system. It was a way to start with a medically supervised weight loss before a gastric bypass. Well, I had really, really good success on it. And do you want me to go into the premise of that or just keep on going?
You can absolutely tell us any background information we need because I don't know what MetaFast is. So go for it.
Okay, so MetaFast, I don't recommend doing it because it was miserable. It was basically really expensive Weight Watchers, so to speak. You would have these shakes or these puddings like 5 times a day, and you'd have one lean and green meal at night whenever you wanted. And I mean, I lost like 50 pounds really, really quick, kind of white knuckling it, kind of getting through it. And that kind of led me down the road of, I thought I was going to be okay. I took up running, started doing half marathons and 5Ks and 10Ks. And by the time I was 24, I was actually pretty good. Now, not going to say I was a world-class athlete, but I was running a sub 9 minute mile. And my best 5K time ever was 22 minutes, 20, maybe 23. And that was consistent. So I was really doing well. And then I moved to Louisiana after college because I had family down here, could not get a job for anything up in Wisconsin. This was back during the big housing bubble crash of 2008. And for every one job that was open for teaching, there were 200 plus applicants. I actually was getting automated rejection letters 3.5 years after I applied for the job because there was such a backlog of candidates. Well, fast forward to moving to Louisiana. I got to back up. Robyn, I almost was going to be your neighbor when I first moved down this way. I was originally supposed to be teaching in Grapevine, Colleyville, but then the opportunity to teach in Louisiana closer to family popped up and I couldn't pass it. So sorry, we were almost neighbors.
We would have been on the same swim schedules because that's one of our district meets.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
There you go. So it was definitely, I'm becoming a very spiritual person again. I kind of lost my faith for a bit, but it's coming back. And that whole thing of getting put to Louisiana, that was a God thing. And it's where he wanted me to be. And I don't have any regrets. I was at my first school. I was still running, still eating pretty well, but then the stress happened. And I don't want to say I went off crazy off the track, but when the stress started, I didn't do what I was supposed to do. I did everything I wasn't supposed to do, kind of ate my feelings, didn't run as much, and the weight kind of came back on. And then I got up to about 315 pounds by about right before I got married. So I decided I was going to slim down for the wedding, and I did Jenny Craig, which the person that I worked with she was really, really sweet, albeit the advice she was giving was extremely misguided back on reflection now. But through a lot of white knuckling and hard work, I was able to get down to 280 pounds for my wedding. So I lost just over 35. And I actually looked pretty good in the tux, so I'll take it. And a couple years passed and went back to doing what I've been doing and ballooned right back up to about 350 pounds right before my son was born. And I realized that I can't do this. I've got to make a change for my son. I don't want to be dead before I'm 50 because of the decision I'm making. He doesn't deserve that. My wife doesn't deserve that. So I decided that I was going to start low carb and get really back into running again. So I did a couch to 5K program here in Shreveport, and in 8 weeks, I went from not running at all to running my first 5K in a wonderful time of just under 40 minutes, which at 320 pounds was pretty good. So then for the next 3 years, I was doing pretty well. I got down to about 260 and I started to get lazy. So about the summer of 2017, I started to slack off. I've been doing really well with low carb. I had been kind of coasting. I was in the driver's seat and on cruise control. And then it happens to everybody. You get cocky, think, oh, a cheat meal here is not going to matter. And here's another cheat meal, no big deal. I'll just get back on it. Well, as everybody knows, most of us don't. Once you start going down that slippery slope, there's no coming back. So I gained a little bit of weight back, probably about 15, 20 pounds. So I was back up to about 280, 290 at that point, about the end of 2017. I should say mid 2017, and we were going to South Padre for the first time. And it's a 9-hour drive from Shreveport to there, and we did it straight. And we got the car unloaded, got everything up to the condo, and the next morning I couldn't walk. And I just chalked it up to, oh, I lugged 2 things that were way too heavy. I can't. I'll be fine. Give it a couple days rest. I'll just take it easy. I'll be good. Well, that wasn't the case. In October of 2017, I ran the Heroes Half Marathon here in Shreveport, and my friend Kim and I got to mile 10, and I had to stop running. We've been doing really well. Like I was on pace to make one of my better times. We got to mile 10, and I said, something's wrong. I can't run anymore. So we had to walk the last 3 miles, and we were about at that last 10th of a mile at mile 13. And this dude goes, hey, quit walking. You got to run to the finish line. I look at him like, dude, I can't. I physically cannot run. He's like, no, you can do it. I was like, dude, don't push it. I cannot run. And we walked to the finish line, and I felt really defeated. And I just thought it was just a muscle pull or something was wrong. So I decided, in my infinite brilliance, to go see a chiropractor, because chiropractors can make an adjustment here or there, and you're good. Well, so they did some things. He worked his voodoo magic, I guess, and I did another half marathon. I was trying to be a half fanatic. So then I went to West Monroe, Louisiana, which is where our good friend Debbie lives. And we were doing the Cottonland, so I could get my 2-week chips, because if you do 2 half marathons in 2 weeks, you're considered a half fanatic. And the same thing happened again. I get to mile 10. Once again, I have to stop running. It was even more painful the second time. So at that point, I knew something was wrong. So my brother-in-law is a PA for one of the health systems here in Shreveport. He was there at the time. I was somewhere else. He says, okay, you're having this pain. I want you to come see me after work. We'll do an x-ray and see what's going on. So I'm thinking, oh, he's going to tell me you've got a torn muscle. You got something that is no big deal. You'll maybe 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and you'll be recovered. Well, we get the x-ray, get on the table, get the x-ray, and I'm sitting there just kind of texting my wife, just saying, hey, I'm just waiting here to see what's coming from it. And all of a sudden I hear my brother-in-law go, dude, get your ass in here. And he goes, how in the F were you running all these years on your hip? And I look at him really confused. I said, what are you talking about? He said, dude, you're bone on bone. There is no cartilage there at all. How you were even running more than a mile is a miracle. So I said, I still wasn't really understanding what he was saying. So I said, I need you to tell me what you mean. He goes, well, here's your hip joint, and here's the socket. Your hip joint is deformed. It's called a cam deformity. So normally the socket of the hip ball is smooth, like a tennis, like a racquetball, and it just pivots inside there, no problem. And the cartilage just keeps it lubricated, so it doesn't have any damage. Well, because my hip bone was deformed with the cam deformity, it actually, all the running and the sports wore off all the cartilage. So at that point, I was completely bone on bone. And he said, I said, well, what's the treatment options? He goes, well, the only way to fix it is to get a hip replacement. And at 34 years old, that's the last thing you want to hear. And actually, if I'm being honest with you, I actually panicked more about the cost of it, because my insurance that I was on with my district is not good. It has a very, very high deductible, and it doesn't cover much. So I'm thinking, oh my God, this is going to be a $5,000 surgery that I can't afford. So I said, well, what are the options that I can delay? Because my son was not even 3 years old. He was 2. So I said, well, what are the options that we could maybe push it off a couple years? He said, well, you can walk, you can take some NSAIDs, some prescription NSAIDs. It was, I can't even think what it was. They gave me prescription NSAID that's like stronger than ibuprofen. It really didn't do anything. So I was basically in limbo. And I'm like, okay, well, he goes, why? He asked me, why do you want to wait? And I kind of lied, but I kind of meant at the same time. I said, well, my son is 2, and I can't imagine having this major surgery when he's that young. He needs me to be mobile and agile. So I basically spent all of 2018. We moved houses. I started another school year after that, and it was the most miserable school year of my life. My my coworkers noticed that I was unhappy. They noticed that I was in pain, that I wasn't able to move, that I was not living my best life, so to speak. But in reality, I was just in so much pain that I was in survival mode. And I was in survival mode for almost 2 years. Finally, open enrollment happened in my wife's district, which their insurance is fantastic. I got on open enrollment. We basically, and once I got on their insurance, I called my brother-in-law. I said, okay, let's do it. So he put me up with another doctor in his practice that he said is the best at this hip replacement. So we went in for the consult, and he said, we're going to do an anterior hip replacement. Your recovery time will be about 6 weeks, and you'll be feeling better than you've ever felt before. I said, okay, let's do it. So got the pre-approvals, and in July of 2019, at the ripe old age of 34 years old, I went under the knife and had a total hip replacement. And probably the weirdest part of that surgery, I don't know if anybody's squeamish, but I actually woke up halfway through the surgery as they were hammering the socket into place. And all I could feel was it just felt like someone was tapping me with a finger, but it was the most earth-shattering hammering I've ever heard in my life, as they're hammering the crap out of this joint to get it into place. And I remember looking at the nurse anesthesiologist and going, more drugs, please. And I look over, he pushes a button, and I'm out cold again. But then I get to recovery, wake up, and they say, morning, sunshine. How are you feeling? I said, I was just kind of confused. I'm like, I'm groggy. How'd everything go? Oh, they're like, oh, everything went great. You didn't shut up for the entire surgery. Apparently, because it wasn't full anesthesia. It was, they did the spinal block from the spine down, the lower spine down, and they gave me the twilight juice, that I was talking the entire surgery. Apparently, I was calling the doctor the man. Apparently was saying some choice swear words. They would never tell me exactly what I said, but they said I was probably their funniest patient of the day. So that night, I'm in the hospital recovering, and they come and get me up. It was probably 2.5 hours after surgery. Said, okay, you got to get up and walk around the floor. And I'm like, really? She goes, yeah, we got to get you moving so you don't get blood clots, and also to make sure the joint works. So I remember getting up out of that bed with a walker, and they came to me first because I was the youngest person on the floor by about 30 years. And I remember walking down that hallway like a newborn giraffe, and it was the weirdest feeling of pain and confusion and nausea. And it's something I'll never forget. It was just walking around the slowest I've ever walked on a walker, feeling unstable. And I really felt like I was never in control. So then I had I'm sure you've stayed in the hospital overnight, and you know it's not restful. Every time those hospital beds are not comfortable. So every time I fell asleep, I would be woken up to get my vitals. And since I couldn't get up unassisted. I had the portable urinal, which is a whole experience in itself. It was probably the worst night of my life. And I got through it, got up the next day, they got me walking again, and they sent me home. And then I spent the next month recovering at home. And, it felt like it was slow progress, but they say once you forget that once you can progress from the walker to the cane, you've really gone far. And then when you go from the cane to forgetting the cane, you really make the progress. So I started that's the 2019 school year off with a cane the first 2 weeks. And my kids were great. Like they watched out for me. I really appreciate them. They knew I had this surgery and that I had to be careful, and you got to be careful around me. So we were good. And then finally, about the second week of school, no more cane, and I was slowly on my way to being back to normal. But unfortunately, normal never truly happened, because what was the first question? Can I run again? And the answer was no. And that absolutely gutted me, because I'm a very social person. My friend Kim and I and another friend Lauren, we ran every Saturday together, 6 to 10 miles. And once I couldn't do it anymore, the friendship changed. And it wasn't anybody's fault. It's just because running those Saturday morning runs is was what kept us together. Now, it was really hard because then they were they did a couple marathons together, and I was stuck cheering them on from home because I couldn't do it. And the more time went on, the more depressed I got, because I never dealt with it. The one thing I wish I had done after the surgery, or even before the surgery, was to talk to a counselor, because I had a lot of I'm cheering up just thinking about it. I had a lot of repressed emotions that I never shared, because didn't want to burden anybody. I didn't want people to know just how sad I was and how depressed I was, because that's my burden. At least that was my thinking. So what did I do? I used the fork. I used the fork. I used the sugar. I used the grains. I used the Cokes. I used everything. And that only got so far. So the next 2.5 years was basically just me coasting along, basically in a haze. Like, I didn't really, honestly, I don't tell a lot of people this, is that there were times where I didn't care if I was alive or dead. And I hate saying that, because I didn't even tell my wife that, because I didn't want her to know that burden. And it was just, I was just kind of treading water, just waiting for something to happen. And I don't know, it was my best friend from high school. Sorry. In 2022, right, just over 2 years ago, my best friend from high school got married, and he asked me to be his best man. So he was supposed to get a tux from Men's Warehouse, because it was a wedding. Well, he and his wife both got COVID, so the wedding had to be postponed. And of course, tux reservations, if you don't pick them up, they get canceled. They didn't want to extend them, so he said, "Why don't you just wear a suit coat and a dark suit coat and pants?" I said, "Well, I don't have one, but I'll go buy one." So I went to our local J.C. Penney, and I bought one, and it was the biggest one they had on the rack. I still have it. It's like a Shaq's big and tall, and it's stretchy, because it's designed for big guys who may not fit in a suit coat otherwise. So I bought that, went down to Brown's. The wedding was in McAllen, Texas, and had a great time. Enjoyed the heck out of it. Ate all the food, of course, because that's what my life revolved around, was food. And we got the wedding pictures back about 2 months later, and I posted this picture on Twitter several times. And it was like, that was that glass breaking moment that I realized that I was going down a bad road. And I was like, I didn't even recognize myself. I looked at that picture and I cried, because I was so big. And I finally had that moment where I realized that if I don't change, I'm going to die. And I was being selfish. And I say that because, I had a pity party for 2.5 years, which was really not something I wanted to have. But when you're in the deeps of deep depression, you don't realize just how bad it is. So I finally had that aha moment, but I wasn't ready to deal with it quite yet. Then my kiddos invited me to a soccer game, and we took a picture together, so I could share out to brag to my my coworker that couldn't make it, because the kids love both me and her. So I looked at that picture, and I was like, holy crap, this is bad. And that was finally the aha moment. So and that's when I decided it's time to make a change. And I stepped on the scale and I saw a number that said something I'd never seen. It said 376. And I remember thinking, oh my God, how far have I fallen? So I called my doctor, got a physical, just because I wanted to see where I was. And this is where I know God was kind of protecting me to keep me from really going off the edge, because I got those blood test results, and no, they weren't good, but they were nowhere near as bad as I could have been. Like my A1C was 6.5, maybe 7. It should have been a lot higher. I was expecting to be 12 or 13, something astronomical. It wasn't. My triglycerides were, what's a bad number? Is like 100, is 100 bad? What?
Yeah.
It was
Anything in the hundreds is definitely bad.
okay. So it was in the high 90s. It was in the mid to high 90s. My total cholesterol was elevated. So they weren't bad, but I decided it was time to make a change. So I actually had found Vinny Tortorich through, believe it or not, Facebook, when one of the fat documentaries was coming out. May have been Fat 2. I don't remember, to be honest with you, but it was a sponsored Facebook ad. So I'm like, and it was several months before. So I bought it and I watched it and I sat on it for months. But I remember that Vinny said he had a podcast. So I started listening to it, and I listened to it for months. But again, I wasn't ready to deal with what was going on with me. As Anna Vicino says, it was the emotional shit, and I wasn't ready for it. So I just kind of treaded water. And I think about, ironically, eating a bag of chips and listening to a fitness podcast about eating low carb. It was ironic, but I wasn't ready. But finally, in April of 2022, I was ready, and I made that choice to make a change. And that's where my life kind of changed for the better. And immediately I saw results. I started following the NSNG style of eating, and I was pretty strict, and I lost 25 pounds really quick. I went from 376 to 351 in a matter of a month and a half. And it was crazy. And then fast forward, I got down to about 315, kind of took my eye off the prize for a bit, and have kind of teeter-tottered back and forth since then. Had some struggles, staying on the bandwagon. Again, it's mostly been from stress, but that's something I'm learning to deal with. That's been the biggest source of stumbles for me, is when things at work get stressful, I don't handle them the way I should. And I'm still learning. And it's funny enough, Mardi Gras just ended. Fat Tuesday was 2 days ago. Ash Wednesday was yesterday. So I decided Lent's a perfect time to start over. So I was a practicing Catholic up until I was 22. And, Lent was always, don't eat meat on Fridays, give something up. But I decided to take a little bit further, as I was recommitting to really keeping the sugars and the grains completely gone, abstaining 100% from them all for 43 days of Lent as a way to get started. But also focusing on, my spiritual life, because that was one area that, when I was really embedded with that things that I was not as depressed or as anxious. So I committed to that. I'm going to read my Bible for a few minutes every day, read my devotionals, pray, those kind of things. So spiritual health, physical health of making sure there's no sugars or grains in the diet, and then just really working on stress management. And just since I started that, even just since yesterday, I feel like my whole demeanor has changed. And it's amazing what the human mind can do when you're truly committed to it. And I know it's so weird saying it's only been 2 days, but it's been 2 very successful days, and in a time when I haven't felt successful in a long time. And tonight, here I am sharing with people, feeling at the same time like I'm a little bit of a hypocrite, because here I am having gained some weight back, but I haven't quit. And that's the biggest thing, is that through all these ups and downs, years ago, I would have quit and said, screw it. I'll just be fat and unhappy. Well, it's not happening. I'm fighting through it. I'm clawing my way back. I'm not giving up. I've used you and Scott, Robyn, and Jen as people that really have helped me to stay on track, something I haven't had before. So before we go any further, I just want to say I really, really appreciate you guys for everything. Even though I feel like I make the same stupid mistakes, I wouldn't be coming back if it wasn't for the two of you right now, right in front of me.
Well, thank you, Tim, because we enjoy being in this community together, and I think that's part of why Scott and I wanted to have these conversations with people, is because we're such a loving community. We care for each other so much, and it's fun and interesting to meet people online, and then like we've all had the opportunity to meet each other. And I know not everybody gets to do that, but I'm very thankful that we've been able to do that, and I appreciate this story, and I appreciate the fact that you have all of these feelings, and I know other people are in that same situation, that feeling of hypocritical, like, we talk about this, the whole we have a compass rose as our little logo, and it's because it's this journey we're navigating through, and some days we're up and some days we're down. We really just want to trend in the right direction, and that's what you've been doing this whole time. We've been watching you learn each thing and try to implement them as they go. And sometimes, I do recall a coffee that was flavored like king cake that we had to get through. Like, these things are out there, these temptations are out there. We're navigating through all of this, and we can't even go to the hardware store without being bombarded with sodas and candies. It doesn't make any sense, but that's the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
And here you are doing you, being you, recommitting to yourself because you've been through this past and you don't want it for yourself any longer.
Yeah.
So I commend you for that.
I appreciate that. And it's funny, we're talking about the hypocritical part. There's guys like Dave Dana who love that guy. He's done amazing. And then there's Eric. Eric Couch over in Alabama. He's a great guy too. And I'm so proud of them because they've done such amazing things. And it's only human that, I feel like, why am I not that far? What am I doing wrong? Why am I screwing up when they're not? I know they've got their own struggles. They have their own demons that they're dealing with. But just to see guys that have been that are in my shoes, that are doing the work and they're making the changes, it's amazing. And I don't know if Eric is in there or if Dave's there, but if you are, guys, I love you both and I appreciate you very, very much.
Well, and that's the thing. That's why everyone who is out loud with their story says their story out loud, because they hope that they're smacking them across the head with their information and helping someone. And we may not even ever know who that one person is, but everyone who puts their story out there is helping someone. So I can see that questions are rolling in, so Scott's going to have some questions for you. But before we do that, I do want to just go backwards and touch on everybody who's with us live, I believe, knows who we're talking about. But again, we've met Tim through the NSNG, No Sugars, No Grains group. That's Vinnie Tortorich's trademark, and we want to definitely make sure that we give him credit for that because he has given so much to us so freely. So I just wanted to make sure we touch base on that. And Scott, do we have any questions?
Yes, I got a few of them. We're going to start off with Michelle. She has a question. She's asking about your hip. How's your hip feeling now? You back to 100%? You not quite? Will you ever be? What's the status on that?
Well, the funny thing is after having surgery, the pain, it was a different pain afterwards, and it was really just the incision healing. Like the pain it was a totally different weird pain when I was done, because they cut your hip open a good 8-10 inches to get it in there. And now because normally when they do an anterior approach, they cut the front of your calf and move the muscles aside to do it. But because I was bigger, they had to go to the side. So I had this massive incision down the side of my leg. And, that hurt a lot. And that was really why I had struggled moving, because that was what hurt. Now, fast forward almost 4 years. No, it is 4 years. It'll be 5 years this July. And I'm pretty much completely pain-free. But there are times, though, that I feel it. Really, it's when it rains. As weird as that is, like when the pressure and humidity changes, I sometimes feel it there. But for the most part, I'm completely pain-free.
I was going to ask, did that come up? I don't know if I'm stepping on somebody else's question, but was that part of the issue in getting the surgery in the first place? So did you have to, I mean, I know they wanted to do it right away, but did you have to wait because of your weight?
No, they could have done it right away, because the anterior approach, the preferred way for anterior is to go down the middle of your calf between your knee, from between the bottom of your stomach to your knee, that right in front where it's easiest. But because of my weight, which was, I don't know, 320 at the time, it was just easier to do on the side. It's a safer procedure than posterior. I remember I asked the doctor, I said, what are my restrictions after I'm recovered? He goes, don't be a dumbass. I said, okay, I can handle that. So basically, I don't have any restrictions except I'm not allowed to run. The one thing I really wanted to do back, and that was kind of the cyclical thing of where the depression came from, was that being told, no, you can't. And I hope I don't mind jumping back on this, is that after I was told I couldn't run, I tried to find that other outlet, and it just didn't work. Biking, I don't mind it, but I don't know anybody that bikes around here. The biking community is a very small niche. Well, I know you, Scott, but you're just past Tyler, which is, it's not convenient for us to meet every Saturday. I mean, I'd love to.
Makes for a heck of a ride, though.
It does. I mean, shoot, it's 120 miles one way.
Yes.
But then I tried that. I tried swimming. Didn't really I liked it, but it was a solitary. It was me in the water, nobody else, and didn't like that. Walk the dog is great, but it still wasn't. It didn't fulfill. So I spent a lot of time searching for the next companionship, and I never found it. And then I never dealt with the depression that came with that, because it sounds strange even saying now, is I never mourned the loss of that hobby, of that passion. And then I just ate the feelings away. But it took years, but I finally have accepted it, moved to a point where I'm okay now. And I like to go weightlift at the gym and walk on the treadmill to warm up before that. And I'm okay with knowing that what in the past is never going to happen again. So I'm at peace with it finally. And that's helped me to really heal a lot physically and mentally.
I'm gonna ask
When
a
you
question.
say, oh, I'm sorry, Scott, I did it again. When you say
that's fine.
you were mourning the loss, and you're talking about, it seems weird now to mourn the loss of that, but I think everyone has an experience, and I think all of us share this experience, that we mourn the loss of the food that we decide not to eat anymore. And those are important feelings that we all need to get through. But for you, you have another very specific example, because you're not able to run it anymore. And have you done anything to try to work through those? Do you have a program set up for yourself? Do you have someone you talk to? Do you have, the other outlets didn't work? What have you put in place to try to move through those feelings?
Well, I went to counseling for a long time, I spoke with a counselor. We worked through a lot of feelings, and it wasn't just the running. It actually was, believe it or not, there was some unresolved issues with my biological father, because he is a runner. He's been a runner since the late 70s. And, that was kind of how we connected. And when I couldn't do it anymore, that was kind of a loss there. And it was more than just the run. but it was also, and again, it was also the social aspect that, you know, that was how I made friends, and I had my little group. And when that all fell apart, that part was gone too. So it was not just the activity, it was everything else that came around it. And and there was nothing better than going to a race, standing amongst a bunch of porta potties and waiting for that race among 10,000 of your best friends. Like, I remember, I'll never forget doing the Dallas Marathon right after I got married in 2012. Here I am in downtown Dallas, right by the convention center, me and 30,000 people waiting to go. It was 28 degrees. It was kind of stinky, and I loved every minute of it. And I've missed that. But this year I did 2 5Ks. I walked them with a good friend of mine, and we had a blast. And it really has helped me move on, was it realized, hey, I can still do some of the smaller races, even though I can't run them. I can still participate. I can still take part in the pre-race festivities. I can still stay for the stuff afterwards. I can still have a bib and still cross the finish line. And it's just different. And it doesn't mean it's bad. It's different, and it's kind of exciting because I've gotten to know her a little bit better. It's my son's best friend's mom, and it's kind of funny. We became better friends because of it. You know, it was before she was Kanan's mom. Now she's Crystal, and we actually have fun together, and my wife has approved it because, you know, we've known each other for a long time. So it's been great. And I feel like I got a little bit of myself back through that.
So I'm gonna ask a question. It ties in. I'm gonna kind of flip flop a little bit of questions here, but just because it dovetails off what we've been talking about. So Nick was asking, do you have like any? You hit on it a little bit. Do you have any fitness programs you follow now?
I don't really have a program I do. I kind of have workout routines that I follow when I go to the gym. I'll do an arm and abs, and I'll do legs and abs, and it's a matter of just just working to get stronger is the biggest thing. I don't have a set program though.
Gotcha. Okay. So Jen had a question. I cut Nick's question in front of hers, but because it tied in. But so with the NSNG, have you ever gotten to a point where it kind of sounds like you have, but have you gotten to a point where you ever felt like giving up on it, and what keeps you coming back?
I don't think there's ever been a point where I've given up on it, but what keeps me coming back is the success that I had. I mean, I was pre-diabetic. I had high blood pressure. I had elevated blood pressure, elevated cholesterol, elevated triglycerides. And within 6 months, my triglycerides were in the 40s, blood pressure stabilized, cholesterol was normal, A1C went down to 5.1. So I mean, it was literally the healing gift that keeps on giving, and mental clarity was better. And the only reason I ever kind of stepped back from it was because I wasn't dealing with stress.
So I want to go back to something you said earlier. You were talking about a diet you were following. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of it, but you said it was typical prior to gastric bypass surgery.
It was called Metafast.
Metafast. Were you considering gastric bypass? Is that why you were doing it, or?
You know, if I'm being honest, I had thought about it, but I just wanted to lose some weight at that point. I mean, it wasn't off the table, but it was something I considered, but never actually did. And then I should say, I actually considered a gastric bypass back in 2019. I don't know, not 2019, about 2021. I actually went to the best bariatric surgeon in Shreveport for it. And I met with him, and I had this bad feeling. Like, he called himself a self-proclaimed narcissist. And that was immediate red flags. I was like, oh, this is not good. So he gave me the information, and I read through it, and I was like, no, I can't do this. And then I felt hopeless for a long time after that. And it wasn't until I started NSNG that it was like, okay, now I got this. But I'm so glad that, and again, you know, I'm a fairly spiritual person. I think that was God's way of saying, this is not for you. Don't do it. that he put that doctor in my path to make me realize that this is a mistake.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely, that's interesting how it works that way. Um, personal question of mine. So you were talking about how you knew about NSNG for a while, and you didn't pull the trigger on it or whatever, but you got to a point that you finally did. There was a couple points where it sounded like you were close to going into it, but you just weren't ready. What was that point? What made it where you were ready?
It was seeing the picture of myself with my kids, and it was I might post it on my Twitter tonight, just people that want to see it. I don't know if there's a way I can't share my screen with it, but it was just when I saw it, it's to this day I still think, wow, who is that guy? And that was really the final nail. First seeing myself in a picture from my best friend's wedding, where I look, for lack of a better term, like the Michelin Man, and then seeing that picture, and then seeing another picture, it was finally when I realized I had to change. Because I just even in the picture I looked physically uncomfortable.
I understand that feeling. Trust me, I avoided cameras like nobody else's business. I try to be just a head in the background because I figured if they just saw that, nobody would know I was overweight. So didn't work. Everybody figured it out still. But so Michelle has another question. Are there NSNG foods that you are surprised that you enjoy that you didn't possibly eat before?
Trying to think. Honestly, no. The pretty much everything that is NSNG approved is stuff that I like. I mean, I basically have always liked meat and eggs and cheese and that kind of stuff. I've never really been a big fan of vegetables though. So I kind of like to say that I do when I say really strict NSNG, I basically mean it's just the meats and the eggs, because that's what I really like. And I for a long time I felt guilty about not eating a vegetable, but it's like, why? I don't really need it.
Yeah, I still feel guilty sometimes doing that, but I just realized that's every 1980s commercial I saw telling me I was supposed to do that. So, but it is still weird. It's still like foreign to look down and be like, man, that's a lot of meat. There's not a green thing on there. It's still, I mean, it's been my norm for a long time, but it's still a weird thing sometimes. I agree with you there.
Yeah, I do like the occasional avocado though, and onions.
I thought I had another one here. Robyn, did you have anything in the meantime? I'm looking for these other questions I thought I had here.
Okay, yeah, sure. You go ahead and look through. I want to talk about this common theme that you've had, Tim, where you talk about stress and dealing with stress. What management skills have you now put in? I know that you are dealing with. I just know personally that you're dealing with some stress right now, and you have this plan with the Lent thing, and let's hope that this thing turns into, when you do things over and over again, they become the new normal. But what things are you putting in place to help you deal with these stressful times?
Well, if I'm being completely honest, the biggest thing I'm doing is I'm allowing myself to feel feelings. Is that I'm okay with. I had to learn to be okay with feeling stressed and feeling anxiety and working through it. And instead of automatically using a fork to put those feelings down by instead of using my brain to think this through, I'm going to use a cupcake just as an example off the top of my head. But I'm learning to experience emotions and even if it's not a pleasant one, to actually feel feelings and experience that loss, experience that stress, experience that anger and anxiety, all those different emotions, and work through it. Whereas before I would just use the fork to pacify it and never deal with it.
I absolutely love that answer, and I think everyone listening, please hear that, because that is such an important piece. You have to feel the feelings. You can't continue to hide from the feelings. And I lived in that world forever, just hiding from everything. And I mean, to the point that I'm literally in the house all day long and won't even leave my house. So, the getting up in the morning and going to the gym and putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation so that you can work yourself through that uncomfortable situation applies for any feeling. It's not just the physical feelings of lifting the weight, but you carry a weight all the time, and those become different stressors, and getting through those. So I that was a great answer. I don't know that I've heard anybody actually say that so well, because I don't know that I would have even thought if somebody asked me that question, I would have been like, oh, I don't know. So so thank you for enlightening me, because now I know where to focus that energy. Did you get another question, Scott?
Yes, I did. Nick was asking if you have any current goals, whether it be weight, diet, life, anything, any eye on the prize type thing right now.
Well, really those 4 goals I put out on Twitter or X yesterday that's what I'm really focusing on for the next 42 days is, really tightening up my eating routine, getting that really squared away, dealing with my stress, getting my spiritual health back where I want it to be. That's my current goal. Now, long-term goals, the goal is to lose 100 pounds by the end of the year, which is
Nice.
what, 12 pounds a month, maybe. Even if I don't make it all the way, I still win. If I end the year at 80 pounds, that's still 80 pounds. So I don't want to I'm not setting a hard deadline of when I want to be done, because I'm never going to be finished. But if I could be 100 pounds down by the end of the year, that would be the ultimate fantastic prize. You probably would not be able to wipe the smile off my face for a long time. But even if it's 60 pounds, 80 pounds, I'll take it. Even if it's 50, as long as I've improved and grown, that's the progress. This is a marathon, not a sprint. Runner's reference.
I agree with you, buddy. That's a great way to put it. I mean, it's just try to improve every day. Yeah, you could set goals and hope for things, but as long as you're just pushing every day, yeah, it's a great way to. I like how you put it in perspective. Robyn, go for it.
Yeah, and I always say I'm always a work in progress, and that's exactly it. It's hard to make a goal that has so many different variables that you can't control, because you don't know what's coming up in your future. Now, we know that you don't want to resort to food, so that's going to be a good thing. But to say 100 pounds, but you don't know how your body's going to respond to what you're giving it. So I love that outlook, where as long as I'm losing, then I'm winning. That's that's fantastic, because you know what? You've given yourself extra time because you're eating healthier, because you're doing these things. You've given yourself, because you're working on the mental aspect of it. You're giving yourself extra time on your life to work on these things, and you're going to get there, and it's not going to be an issue. You're just going to have to do the work, and keep progressing forward. I see that we have one more question.
That's from our buddy Jen. She's asking, what do you do to keep yourself accountable, or do you have any? Do you find that even necessary?
Oh, you have to be accountable. If you're not accountable, that's when things go off the rail. And now that I say that out loud, every time that I kind of swayed off the road, what wasn't I doing? Holding myself accountable, stepping on that scale, even if it's once a week. If it wasn't, keeping an eye on what I was doing or being deliberate, that's when things went off the course. So really my big accountability is, I post on Twitter, not enough, because I feel like I should do more, because people seem to enjoy what I put out there. So I feel I hate to say I want to do more social media, but I want to do a little bit more, just to maybe just give more people encouragement and try, even though I suck at it sometimes royally. I'm sorry, where was I going with this? I had a squirrel moment there. How do I keep myself accountable?
Right, right.
Sorry. So it's been a long day. Um, and then, trying to post more on Twitter, because if I pay for the Twitter Blue, I might as well use it. And then, our little group text we have has helped a lot, even if it's just us joking about sending cats to Abu Dhabi, or Scott having no idea about the Friends references we're talking about. It's a bright spot in my day. It's one of the pinned conversations in my messaging app.
Nice. I love that, man. Yeah, I'm enjoying it too. It breaks up the days. stress and monotony, and helps put a smile on my face. I appreciate all of you guys for doing that as well.
Even if you don't respond to us half the time.
Man, I might quit my job. My job is getting in the way of responding to these messages.
Hey, I still let the I don't let the kids get in the way of it.
Here,
If
I'm
you're
going to tell them.
if you're listening, bosses in Bossier Parish, I'm totally kidding.
I'm going to put on my out of office, busy texting friends. I'll get to you eventually.
I love it.
I
So that
think
is,
that's, I don't see anything wrong with that. And everyone, just in case you are wondering, Tim does accept fan mail to 15 Yemen Road, Yemen.
If you don't know what I'm talking about, that's a reference to Friends when Chandler was trying to get rid of Janice.
Which I was the only one who got, I think, but I got it only because I just watched. So anyway, we've gone off the rails here. Sorry, everybody. We always end our conversation. Well, actually, I have two questions. So the first one, before I ask our final question, is where can people find you?
You can the best way to find me with weight loss stuff is on Twitter at fleeing400. That's fleeing and then the number 400. I'm on Instagram, but I usually mostly use that for my my little photography side hustle. But that's at tmallien, tmallien. And if you want to find me on Facebook, you can find me there too. That's really where I live, is those three realms. I thought about doing more on the TikToks, but I don't have the time for that. Twitter's enough.
Yeah, I don't do the TikTok at all, and Instagram is too fast for me. I don't know. I'm social media inept, I guess. That's okay. We could do this though. That I'm pretty happy with that. You have something else?
Yeah, I just wanted to interject and say the conversations that Robyn and I have about promoting the show and the channel through social media is hilarious, because it is the blind leading the blind, and we can't figure out. Basically, our IT is her daughter. She tells us what the fix in about 2 seconds, and we're spending days on end. So it is pretty fun. The how how inept we are with social media, but Robyn's actually killing it. So thank you with that.
Y'all, you need to know that this whole thing is seriously a labor of love. We just want to get the messages out there. We want to spread this hope. And, there's a lot going on that we're just learning as we go. So we appreciate all of you. That said, Tim, we end every show with this question. If you had one piece of advice to give someone who is just now embarking on their health journey, what would it be?
My biggest piece of advice would be to write down what you're doing. And it could be a tweet. It could be posting it on Facebook. It could be writing it in a journal. Just keeping thoughts about what you're doing. That's a big way. That's a big thing for me. Is I'm an English teacher. I like to write. That helps me a lot. If that's not your thing to write, you could vlog. If you don't want to do vlogs, maybe just tell somebody what you're doing, because that helps you stay accountable. And the Twitter, as annoying as it could be sometimes, it's a nice tool to stay connected to people, like-minded people, and be involved with what's going on. So that's one thing. I'm going to go with two things. The first one being, write it down. If it's even just for yourself, keep a journal, keep something that you can use to look back at where you've gone, where you've come from. And the other one is be honest with yourself. It's so easy to tell yourself lies that it's no big deal. I'll start tomorrow. This is okay. Don't be afraid to be accountable to yourself and be honest. We all screw up. I am a prime example of screwing up. I've been screwing up for 25 years, and it's okay, because every time I've realized what I'm doing, I can fix it. And it's not over until you're dead. And I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. So when you struggle, have those honest conversations with yourself. And that's, again, where writing for me comes into place, because I can write down what I'm thinking, I write down what I'm feeling, and I can really help work myself through it. if I don't want to tell somebody else. And okay, I lied. My third thing is have that person that you can share your struggles with, your frustrations, your successes. I have the two of you and Jen. That's one thing when I did this before that I sucked at, was I didn't have that person I could text anytime and be like, hey, I'm struggling. Hey, I'm doing great. Whatever. How's the weather over there in Texas? Or are we in Louisiana? Sorry, Scott had to do it. But you're not meant to do this journey alone. And even find that person you can trust that will share the journey with you, even if it's just someone you can check in with. Heck, if someone here doesn't have that person, find me on Twitter. We'll connect. I'll do what I can. I can't say I'll have all the answers, but I will always offer a listening shoulder, or I'm sorry, listening ear. Sorry again, long day. But so biggest things, be honest with yourself. Find that person that can walk this journey with you, and write it down. Whether it's typing it, writing it out by hand, whatever, vlogs, do something where you can keep a log of what you're doing. Not to anybody has to see it, but it's for you to see, and to see where your growth, your struggles, your successes, all of it, because it's your story. Why not write it down?
Great stuff, Tim. Appreciate you, buddy. We love you, and we thank you for coming on here, man.
That was my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Well, I'm so grateful for you for coming on and just being honest. I love that your 3-part answer to a 1-part question.
Sorry, English speaker in me.
But all of those things are wonderful, and it made me think. I started putting my journey out there because I was in, the groups that we were in, and what you do notice when you're in these groups and in these channels is that people disappear. So I'm gonna offer a challenge today to everyone who is with us listening, and everyone who listens to us in the replay, is to reach out to someone you haven't heard from in a while, check in on them, see how they're doing, because that may be everything that they need to get them started again. And I know that that's a huge thing that has happened to me. I've disappeared and somebody's reached out to me, and it woke me back up again. So thank you so much, Tim. I really appreciate you coming on. I do want to remind you to go back afterwards and read the comments, because there's a lot of nice things getting put out there for you to take a look at. And you always have us and everyone in our community, everyone here in the community. You have us. You can always reach out to us. We are all here for you, and we want to see everyone find success. Thanks again, Tim. And everyone for joining us. We will not be on next week. We will be on the week after. We've got a great guest lined up. So be looking out for our advertisements. I'll put something out next Thursday on who our next guest will be. Thanks, everyone, and we will see you next time. Bye.